I talk to people like you, Jeff, who've been through, a long haul to get there. That moment of passing, was it worth it?
Oh yeah. I'm not a crier. Okay. I don't blubber. I don't cry, but I was actually moved to tears. It was like tears of joy. Finally, what a relief. It's been one of the top type feelings in my whole life. So
yeah, welcome back to Hanging Out with Successful Bar Exam Takers. We've got a really great opportunity today to talk to Jeff Holt. And hi, Jeff. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you, Jackson?
Well, I'm good. I was just saying before we went live that you and I had a great interview yesterday, which I forgot to record in its entirety. So you're very gracious to come back here and share your ideas again. The advantage, I suppose, is that I know a little more about the details of your story. So I'm probably going to ask a little different kinds of questions today. But let's start with the good news that you have to share with everybody.
Well, I passed the bar after 6 times. I failed it my first 5 times, but excited to say I passed it last time.
Great. Congratulations. And which bar exam was this?
It was a UBE. I took it up in North Dakota, although I live in Nebraska.
Right. And you had taken the Nebraska exam the first few times when you started out of law school, when it was the UBE also. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. And what caused you to decide to switch from the Nebraska UBE over to the North Dakota UBE?
Well, I switched mainly because my wife does census in North Dakota, and we drive up to North Dakota 10 days every month, racking up the hotel points. So I decided to take it up there because I'd be up there during the testing. Nebraska has a 270, North Dakota had a 260 to pass, even though it's the same test. The states get they get to decide their scores. So I thought, hey, if I got a 270, I would just transfer down to Nebraska. So I took it up in North Dakota.
Now, North Dakota is a really small jurisdiction. How many people took the exam with you?
16 this February. It's a little larger in July.
A little bit, but not much.
Not much. I think when I took it twice in North Dakota, I think the first time they might have had 30 people in July.
Yeah, that's typical. And actually, they're putting a cap on their enrollment for this July because of COVID up to 85 people, because we've been telling people go to North Dakota. We like the North Dakota bar examiners. They get the first results out of the country, and they are pretty easy to work with, didn't you think?
Oh, very wonderful staff. Starting in North Dakota, I decided to apply for accommodations due to my dyslexia. And I
wanted to talk about that. Yeah, I wanted to talk about that because 2 things that are really unique about your story, I think, Jeff, are that you are a second career lawyer. This was not the first thing that you did in your life. And you had to overcome some pretty significant physical challenges with dyslexia and ADHD. So can you talk a little bit about that?
I always knew I had a learning disability. I did very well in high school, very well in undergrad, summa cum laude and all that. I did very well my second and third year of law school after the initial shock. But I knew I always had to study much, much longer than other people. It would take my average classmate in law school 2 hours to learn. It would take me 12 or 18. I just read extremely slow. Even today, I cannot tell the difference between a lowercase b and a lowercase d. I have to slow it down. I have to slow it way down. I could spell bed 6 different ways in the same sentence. And in North Dakota, when you use your laptop for taking the test, you don't get spell correction.
Right. So one of the things that you did is you applied for these accommodations and they gave you time and a half. Is that correct?
That's right. And I used all of it up, all of it. And it was actually the first time I was able to finish the bar exam, both the essay portion, the multiple choice portion. Before I would leave, I would get to number 85 and time would be up, or I'd be halfway done with my essays and I would have no conclusion.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things to me about your story, Jeff, is that you went from handwriting your exams initially to typing them and then to going to accommodations. Was it hard for you to acknowledge that you needed those accommodations, you needed some additional time and assistance to get through the exam?
It was very hard. I'm a proud person. I'm an old generation. I don't like asking for help. I don't like being a burden on society. And I'm just really proud. But, after $100,000 after law school and a little more than that, and I want to practice, I decided I needed to do something. I knew I had to. So I went to the doctor and says, I believe I have a learning disability. Can you test me, diagnose me, and tell me what I have? So I got tested. I have ADHD. I have severe dyslexia. And so I was able to get the accommodations, and it helped. I would finish the multiple choice maybe a couple minutes before time ran out. I would finish the essays. Well, I was writing clear up until the end, until they said pens down. And then, but what I was able to do, I would do my facts, my legal and law, and then I'd do my analysis. But I would do them all three, and then I'd go back and add in. I'd flesh it out. So at least I got done.
Yeah, you were very strategic about this process. And I think one of the interesting things is that you had come close. You were within 5 points of passing on previous attempts, but just couldn't quite get over the hump. And it was that determination to succeed and to do what it took that I think really makes your story stand out so much to me. There's a fine line between being proud and just saying, okay, this is what I got to do to get it done. And you kind of made that decision, I think, at some point that you were just going to do what it takes. And in hearing you tell me your story yesterday, one of the things I reflected on was how hard you worked in law school, how hard you worked to get all the way through this. Can you just share with people what your law school regimen was like? You were talking about the drive you had to make every day, and I think that's pretty instructive about the kind of person you are.
I live in northeast Nebraska, about just over the side of the Missouri River from Sioux City, Iowa. I applied to University of South Dakota. I chose USD because it was an hour away, and Creighton and UNL were 2-hour drive away. Plus USD was actually cheaper. USD is always in US Magazine as best value or top 3 best value law schools. And so I would get up at 4:45 a.m. I've always gotten up early, always, since I was 20 years old, early riser. I'd get up at 4:45, I'd shower, I'd get dressed, I'd leave my house by 5 a.m. I would drive to law school, get there by 6. I would study, class, study, class, study. I'd leave law school about 8, 9 o'clock at night and get home at 9 or 10. It's about an hour drive away.
But even at that, even with all of those things, you still were putting in enormous hours. You were pretty dedicated even in this early part of this process, right?
Well, I don't like to see my money go to waste. A proud guy. I always did well in school. I always asked my kids to do well in school, to get straight A's, and they did, So I would be a hypocrite if I didn't do that same thing. My first 4.0 I got when I went back to school, I would send to my son and have him put my report card on the fridge. I'm really proud that way. I asked my kids to do it, they did it, and I would do it too. So,
so then what was it like when you got your first bar results back and you weren't successful? I mean, as a proud parent, as a proud husband, as somebody who'd worked so hard in law school, it had to be a shock to you when you got the results.
Well, it was. It tears your heart out, and I'm always the mindset, you don't quit. You just don't quit. I would tell my kids not to quit. You give up and you try again. So again, I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't do that. So I tried again. However, after failing 5 times, it tears your heart out even more each time. And I would rather fail by 500 points than 5. And
that is hard. There's no doubt. And, as we get results in from people, we see people missing by 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 points. I feel much worse for those individuals because you're so close. You're just a couple of answers away, basically. And I know that as you and I conversed about those experiences and talked about that as you were going through it, you were really determined. I mean, I'm just going to keep digging in here. And one of the things that you did to study this last time that I thought was really helpful, and you mentioned it, was using mind maps to take notes. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that helped you sort of organize your thoughts and study?
I love mind mapping. I absolutely loved it. Older generations like me, non-traditional students, so we're back in our flashcard days. We'd use flashcards. We'd make our own. I took your book and I wrote every single question on an index card, and I would write the answer on the back, and I made my own flashcards. Then, probably about whenever I started with you, I started hearing things about mind mapping, and I go, what's this? And I tried it, and it's basically art that it's note taking, but with your own. It was wonderful. It worked good for my way of thinking.
It's a visual note-taking system, so you're able to see the relationships between different concepts, right? So it's not just all jumbled in your brain, but there's a place where everything goes. Is that a fair way to say it?
Exactly. And what helped is in the creations, I'm not very artistic, I would use you as my victim or as a prosecutor or something, and I would put that connection from A to B to C to D, and I could actually literally see that connection in my mind as opposed to just writing on my index cards.
Yeah, I think it's... Yeah, go ahead.
I have to say, this last time, I got, after going with CBR, I started passing the multiple choice. And I started passing with a high score on the multiple choice after I got the accommodations, because I would get 15 more. I would finish the test.
Yeah.
And you suggested, that I put almost all of my time, about 95% of my study time, just on the essays. And that's what I did. And
that made the difference at the end there. You were able to write. And the writing system that we taught, instead of trying to issue spot and get a lot of words out, you were really focused on the disputes instead, right? So
absolutely.
Using the FLA.
That's kind of the beauty of your system, the FLA. If you put your facts down, and I didn't write all the facts because some of them are distractors, but I put all the relevant facts. And then on the law, the mirror image rule comes to mind, or hearsay rule comes to mind, and the exceptions, the exceptions. And then when you argue the disputes, you are actually getting to the issues, and the issues just come. You don't have to, okay, what's the issue here? Is the issue Article 2, or is it common law? They automatically come out. That really helped. You got to know the difference, because there's different rules. And I knew them backwards and forwards, inside and out.
That's pretty exciting. I want to jump to a moment. For most people, one of the hardest things is that moment when results are coming out. You've been through the exam. This is your 6th try. Your family's been behind you and supportive. And now North Dakota is the first state typically, or one of the first states to release results. Can you talk a little bit about what results day was like for you?
Well, they tell you, and I asked, and I says, expect the results around April 10th. So, okay, it's a torture to wait a month and a half for results after taking the bar, but what you do. But on April 2nd, I was checking my email, and it says North Dakota Supreme Court bar results are here. And I'm like, wait, this is 8 days sooner. I expected to suffer another week. But so I get on there, and all I have to do is put in my name and my bar testing number, and I wait and I wait and I wait. And I didn't want to do it. It every time just tears your heart out. And I felt good about some of the tests in the past I took, and I didn't make it. I would fail by, that much. So after a half hour of building up the courage and just trying to find every ounce of bravery I could, I put in my number and I clicked on it, and it was green this time, and it said successful. Okay. And so I passed. It was exciting. I was kind of alone in the house at the time, and I texted everybody. During the application, you have to put referrals, and there's 6 people that I use as referrals. I group texted them. I passed. They all texted me back. I texted my wife. I texted all my kids. There's so many people who helped me. I got on extra mile. I passed. I was so excited.
That's a great feeling, isn't it?
Yes.
And does it, people sometimes ask me, is it worth going on when you haven't been successful? And I often say to them that when I talk to people like you, Jeff, who've been through, a long haul to get there, that moment of passing, was it worth it?
Oh, yeah. For me, it was, I actually I'm not a crier. Okay. I don't blubber. I don't cry, but I was actually moved to tears. It was like tears of joy. Finally, what a relief. It's, you know, I could have got cancer and found out I went into remission, and I would be just as excited as probably, I think it's been one of the top type feelings in my whole life. So.
Yeah, and as it should be. I mean, it's really an extraordinary accomplishment. I mean, look, when you're not 24 years old and you've got some accommodation and disability challenges to deal with, and you've got a life and a family to support, that's a lot on your plate. And I think for you to reach this goal, to pass, and of course now you're able to be licensed in 6 states, which is pretty exciting, including, North Dakota, but not limited to North Dakota. So it's got to feel like the opening of a whole new life for you, right?
It's been an adventure, a journey, one that I wouldn't want to repeat, except for all the failures. These are things that give you experience, so I would repeat it. I just wouldn't want to.
Yeah, I got that. I think that's honest.
But
when we talked yesterday, you said that your advice to people who are in your shoes, was to never give up, never quit. I'm wondering if you could just sort of talk about that for a minute, because I know that there are a lot of people watching us today who are repeat bar takers and probably feel like giving up. What would you say to them?
Don't. You've graduated from law school. Why stop there? It's a lazy way out. I remember Amanda and how many times she took the bar, and she was a great help. And I remember James, great help, and Randy from California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love their stories, and I wanted to feel what they felt. So, I took the caffeinated chewing gum. I did what you decided for me to do. It was you who told me to work on my essays, and it was you. I love your podcasts a week and a half before you come out with your predictions, and you're very clear to say these are just some odds that are going to show up. Okay, but you were spot on. I mean, you said secure transactions. It got a high number in your opinion. So I studied secure transactions. I studied wills and estates and trusts and everything you don't get on the MBE part. And sure enough, they were on there, and I knew it. They were on the bar, and I'm just so thankful that I put that extra time into studying those. And I give you the credit on that. There's so many people, and I'm just so happy I passed.
Well, we're happy for you, and I am so deeply appreciative of you sharing your story. I know it's going to motivate a lot of folks, a lot of people who are feeling kind of down and discouraged. And I know that when they think about the interviews and the people that they're excited about, Jeff is going to be one of the names that they talk about. So I'm excited to see where your career goes from here and what opportunities are there. I think your quality of never giving up is going to make you a terrific member of the bar. And I'm so thrilled for you and excited. I know your family must be just elated that this is over, right?
They are. I look like the troll doll who's been electrocuted with his hair everywhere, but it's over. So bring on new stressors, and the good thing about the UBE, even if you get just above the 260 but not as 270 mark, those 6 states, I think it can also practice in Guam and places like that. And I've lived in Guam for a couple years and in the Marshall Islands, and I lived outside the country. But
yeah, so it's probably more than 6. You're right. I think it is. So
North Dakota and Minnesota, right next to each other. I could practice in Fargo and Moorhead. They're just connected cities separated by a border. A lot of options.
That's great. You deserve all the options and you deserve all the credit. And again, our deep appreciation to you. We're so glad that we could be with you on this journey and that you would share it with other people, and look forward to all of the great things that are going to happen. And so for all of our audience, we want to thank you. And to our audience, thanks for being with us. I hope that this was as inspiring to you as it was for me. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks so much, Jeff.
Thank you, Jackson.